they got in the car and they drove off, and I started walking back. And as I came around the corner, like I literally rounded the corner and took a step, and those same three guys I'd seen earlier are there. And there's two guys on the grass over here, and one guy kind of against the building here. And I step in the middle of them, and immediately I was like, uh-oh. And the guy that was by the building over here pulls out a gun and, sticks it into my stomach. And he's like, shut up, shut up, shut up. Just give us your money, and all that. And well, when you're faced with that, you're suddenly, your whole world collapses down and you're just staring at it. It's like there's a bomb, it's like there's this ticking bomb kind of here, and you're very focused on that. I'm like, okay, they just, they want my wallet. But then part of my brain was screaming at me to just like delay. And I'm like, one guy, the other guy reached around and he was reaching into my pocket for my car keys, and I brushed his hand away. I was like, I gotta, and then, I used to carry my wallet just in my back pocket back then. But even then, as I'm trying to delay, I'm like fumbling with it, taking my time, trying to like stretch out time for some reason. I mean, against all good judgment. And I'm facing this building, the guy with the gun over here, and suddenly he puts it away. And him and the two guys behind me, they all just walk away abruptly. And I'm just standing there, and I turn and I look over my shoulder back at the street.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today, Jerry Witt, is the founder of Nerd Chic Boutique, an online destination for discerning pop culture enthusiasts. It's apparel designed for the moment when someone looks at you and says, cool shirt. The boutique reflects Jerry's belief that great design requires patience and care. Each exclusive item is made to order, and this commitment to quality over speed mirrors his career-long philosophy of trusting intuition over convention. That philosophy has guided Jerry through more than 3 decades as a creative force in visual storytelling. As founder of Motion City Films in Los Angeles 35 years ago, he's directed commercials, music videos, and the independent feature Last Words. His television credits include designing animated playback screens for Bones, Criminal Minds, The Orville, Hawaii Five-0, and FBI Most Wanted. He's also conceived live entertainment experiences and studied improv comedy, all of which inform his eye for design, narrative, and what makes people connect. Jerry, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Doug. It's funny, as I'm hearing you read my bio to me, I'm turning red. I'm so embarrassed because it's like a lot. Thank
So,
you. Thanks for having me on.
so for someone who's never lived in Los Angeles and sees the Hollywood sign up on the mountain, like how did you 35 years ago originally get into the movie business?
Um, as a kid, I lived in Michigan, which is, almost way over in the north, the northeastern sort of section of the United States, or way north, Midwest, I guess. And I did okay in school. My parents really wanted me to be an engineer. My dad worked at General Motors, one of the big automotive industries in Detroit, and they really were sort of guiding me down that path. And it just didn't speak to me. Engineering didn't sound like fun, and I had been making a bunch of short films and stuff like that as a kid, and I was like, I want to make movies. I want to be involved in film and video production, mostly film production back then. And I did sort of pursue the engineering thing for like a year, and then I flipped my major to be like, radio, TV, film production, much to the chagrin of my parents. But then when I graduated, I worked in Michigan for about a year doing some photography work and stuff like that, and was like, even that isn't what I really want. So I packed up my bags and moved to Hollywood, literally Hollywood. Literally got a place like, right at the edge of Hollywood, and
Wow.
started, working in production.
So
Yeah.
you probably watched the Beverly Hillbillies and was like, we're out of here, we're heading in there.
Yeah, totally. Packed up the car and moved. Yeah.
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 So we're very similar in age, and I'm just thinking back to that age. That what sort of cameras and stuff were you working? Where you said you made a couple of very short films, like just
It was a lot of Super 8. My aunt actually was, bless her heart, she gave me a regular 8 millimeter camera. And I started, because film was so precious at that age, as a kid, I was doing a lot of animation. I was doing stuff a frame at a time so that I could, really juice out as much, when it plays back, I would do like every frame counted. So I did a lot of animated stuff, clay animation, cell animation, hand-drawn animation, that kind of stuff for a while. And then I splurged and bought myself a Bolex camera. I don't know if they're hand wound and you can run them in real time. You can also do a frame at a time with those cameras. So yeah, yeah,
wow. Okay, you were into it from early age.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's really cool. And was it easy heading into LA at that sort of time? Was it like did you arrive in a boom time where there was work happening or?
I mean, I guess there was some work happening, but the thing is, I arrived not knowing anyone in production. Like early on, I made some friends that just because of where they lived, we lived in the same apartment complex or whatever, but nobody was really in production. It was like friends that were a bunch, several musicians. I had a roommate that was an actress, but she wasn't like a working actress and all that. So I don't know, for the first like 6 or 8 months, I was just juggling odd jobs, working as like a restaurant host or working as, whatever jobs I could find. I worked at Warehouse Records, which is like a record store. I did all this stuff. And I was like, really, I was kind of at the point of like, oh, I don't know, maybe I made the wrong call here. And I sort of knew my upstairs apartment neighbor worked in production. And one day I saw like a stack of scripts that were delivered to him, at our place. So when that ran into like the next day, I said, "Hey, I noticed that, you had a bunch of scripts here. Are you looking for, anybody, to crew up or any crew people?" And he's like, "Look, I don't have any paying jobs. It's an ultra low budget thing, but you can volunteer on it." So I volunteered on a movie called Blood Diner, and it was a lot. I mean, I was in the art department, but it was like a lot of like cleaning up blood, fake blood, and setting up stuff and moving furniture and stuff like that. But that's sort of how I got my foot in the door. And then that non-paying job led to a job where I was like, working on a thing called night school, where I actually got a little bit of pay. And then the prop master on that show said, "Hey, I'm offered this Roger Corman movie, but they don't have enough money to hire me. But I could recommend you." So he recommended me to do Big Bad Mama 2 with Angie Dickinson way back in the day. And then that, so it just like one thing led to another and the next. And, suddenly I was sort of had some credentials, I guess.
Right. Yeah, which would be handy. And I guess it's who you know rather than what you know sometimes as well.
Right. You start making those connections with, like people within that niche, that are like, "Oh, okay, well, I can recommend you for this or you can do that," and it just led down that path.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And I guess it's a world for most of us. We sort of we watch the end game of what you guys produce, but then it's also we see movies of what Hollywood's like, but you don't really know because it's Hollywoodizes itself and what's it really like and how easy or hard it is. And I guess there's times there where there is a reasonable amount of production happening, and other times because we've got a Warner Brothers movie studio, like a 45-minute drive up the road. And that's been there it's got a theme park next to it. It's probably been there 30 odd years. So there was a time, because the Australian dollars are very weak against the US dollar. So there's been times there where a lot of movies that are supposed to look like they're made in the US have been made out here for various times. And I don't know whether that's because you don't have enough facilities in the States to do it, or it's cheaper to do it out here or whatever. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think it's a combination of all of that, right? And it does cycle through boom and bust times. Like right now, I have a lot of friends that there's just not enough work right now. I mean, I'm very fortunate to, to have I'm working on a television show called CIA on CBS, which hasn't even, aired yet. But it's just, again, fortunate, I knew enough people that led down that path to work on it. And it is funny that you mentioned like the whole glamour aspect. There's so many little tiny jobs within, what you usually see as like Hollywood. There's the things that you end up doing in many cases is like you're just a small little part of this big puzzle.
Yeah. I used to be many years ago a professional firefighter here on the Gold Coast. And so we got roped in a couple of times for when they were filming, like to just stand by in case something went wrong. And one day they were filming a particular movie, and our price, because we were the state government, and our prices got way out there, and the studio decided we're not paying you guys. So they hired like a small independent little fire crew, and they ended up losing a whole studio to a fire. They got, those, is it Panavision cameras? They had a
Yes,
couple
yeah.
of those. There was a Panavision. Apparently, you can only rent those cameras or something like that. So there was a Panavision studio, like building nearby. The only thing apparently they got out of the building without before it crashed to the ground on fire was the one or two Panavision cameras. They got them out and they lost the whole thing. So then when they rebuilt the set, the insurance company said you have to have the state fire service there. Like, so we were off duty. They gave us a real fire engine, and while we're off, and we went and sat there. But I've got to say, and then I've sat. That was I can see the movie. I never actually watched the movie. It was where there was a wax piano that melted. Um, Paris Hilton was in it. Anyway,
Huh.
yeah, and anyway, so they burnt the set down. But I've been on a couple of other movie sets, and I've got to be honest, I found them very boring because they probably shot 10 seconds in the whole 10 hours we were there, 10 seconds of actual what was going to be on the movie. And they just repeated everything over and over and over and over. Guys, if you're on a path of developing your intuition, and I know you are, that's why you're listening here, then the Neurovisor is a tool worth checking out. It uses light and sound to guide your brain into deeper states of awareness, helping you quiet the noise, tap into your inner knowing, and strengthen your intuitive muscle. And who doesn't want that? There's no pills, no fluff, just 11 minutes a day to reset your mind and reconnect with your instincts. I've bought myself one last Christmas and I've added it to my daily practice, and the shifts are real. This is not a paid ad, but if you use the link in the show notes for more information, I do receive a small percentage of the purchase price. I highly recommend you check it out. And the only highlight for me was there was a British actor there, and Rowan Atkinson. Do you know him? And he
Oh yeah, of
has,
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he plays Mr. Bean, which is one of my favorite sort of characters. And he was standing there one day, and he was in the background. Nothing. He wasn't being involved in that filming, but at the time, but he was standing on the edge of the set, and everyone's eyes were sort of off elsewhere where all the action was happening, and he was off at 90 degrees to the left. And I just sort of, because I was fascinated with him, I sort of stopped watching what was being filmed, and I'm back over watching him. And he just did one of these classic Mr. Bean yawns, like with this funny sort of way he yawned. And he actually did that for real. I mean, no one, and I thought, I wonder if he really does that all the time. Like, it was just like, wow. But you weren't allowed to go anywhere near them or anything. And at that stage of my life, which that was a long time ago, I wouldn't have known what to say to him anyway. I've got a lot more confidence in life now and could come up with something normal to say to someone like that without treating him like a megastar. But yeah, so we've had
Sure.
little tiny touches of it, here, and I'm thinking, man, I could not sit on one of these sets day after day. I mean, because we didn't even have a job. We were only going to do anything if it all hit the fan. If the set caught on fire, then we were into action. The chances of that happening was just ridiculously low. After they'd already
Right.
had one big fire like months earlier, they were
But
everything was set in place. Yeah.
But that was the consequences of not having you there, right? Is this whole studio burned down? It's like so they, there's people that that's their whole job is they sit around, they figure out every contingency that you might need, and they just try and have it all there. And even if they're just sitting around waiting, everybody talks about how it's a big industry of hurry up and wait. Like you're just waiting, 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 and then when it's go time, you're just like, okay, we got to do this, but a lot of sitting around for sure.
Yeah. But like I say,
Yeah,
when it's time to go, you've got to do everything precisely, perfectly, first time and like world class. Yeah. Yeah.
for
I
sure.
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Unusual industry. But because 99.9% of the population just see the finished product, don't see what goes into behind the scenes of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
illusion of the whole thing.
There's just so many little jobs within jobs and stuff like that. There's the prop master that organizes the props, but then there's all these like prop fabricators that are making, anything anybody picks up or whatever, or that's somebody that specially builds these things that appear on screen held by actors or like my job, it's really specialized to like just the screens that appear on set or are needed to be filled in post. We build all these graphics and animations like if they're in a radar room, we have to pre-build that or even if somebody is a character is on their laptop, in a say a Zoom meeting or whatever, we can't use the Zoom interface or the Google website. We have to rebuild our own version of it that
Oh,
doesn't use any trademarks. So we're like,
that must take
there's a fair amount of
so long. Wow.
yeah, there's a fair amount of forgery that you're doing. You're building these fake worlds out of that are sort of reflecting the real world.
Yeah. So in the bio there, it talks about uses the term visual storytelling. So which sounds very basic and obvious, but how do you tell that story visually? Like there must be so much to like condense it down and do it so quickly to get, because I mean there are movies that fail at that and people get bored very quickly and they're like, what's this? Like I don't know what's going on. How do you tell the story visually, like so that you don't miss any bits out and get the important bits. And
That's interesting. And it's also, I mean, because I know your podcast is a lot about intuition, and a lot of it is whether it's conscious or not. I think the script writer, the person, the screenplay, often has hints as to what things should look like, and maybe it's not even blatant, maybe it's not even what they had in mind, but as somebody has put those words down on paper that something looks like something and all that, and then as you approach it you're kind of like sort of tuning in what the screenplay is giving you, but then bringing in whatever else you have, and sort of like synthesizing it into like okay, it should look like this. This particular thing should look cartoony. This is the evil guy's lair. So I mean, I just had one that was a phone graphic, and I hit his phone background screen. It just was like sort of like this black and gray mesh, but there was like sort of a red light behind it. And I was like, it feels to me like this would be something that this bad guy would be attracted to, So like even his background of his phone, has this sort of like, it's not blatantly like, hey, I'm a bad guy, but it's sort of a little bit of that. So I don't know. It's weird though. It's like just into it, You just sort of like pick up what they've put down and then you reflect it.
right. So even you creating visual prompts, like background stuff, you're trying to pick up on what who's it for? I need to show the Zoom meeting fake thing I'm making or whatever. Is it for a good guy, bad guy? Is it for an attractive woman or a 4-year-old or who's on the other end? Yeah, right.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then that sort of, I mean, not even that, but like, there's all the dressing around it, what kind of desktop does that person have? What is their, are they, I mean, maybe, we have versions of like our version of a Mac or a Linux or a PC and, what does that look like? So yeah, it sort of like impacts all that.
Yeah. So settings, I guess, intuitively setting the scene to all the
Yeah.
subtle bits that,
Cues.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be
Yeah.
difficult.
And then like back to what you were saying earlier, and then it appears on a movie or a TV show for like, like a glimpse. It's just like you spend sometimes a day or two on something and it's like here and gone, within the show. You put all this energy into something that's just, but that little glimpse impacted, however many, viewers, and it's some of them picked up on it, one way or
It
another.
does, because I know sometimes at the beginning of a movie, because sometimes a movie can take 15, 20 minutes before you actually really know what's going to happen or happening. And I've maybe watched a movie once, and then I said to my wife, "Oh, you have to watch this movie. It's really good." And, in the first 30 seconds, she's distracted with something like that. And I pause it and I go, hang on. Just get your coffee, do it, just settle in and just rewind it back. Because if you miss this bit, like, because, like I got it, I saw that bit the first time, but for the next 20 minutes, I wondered what that bit was about, like, and yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes there's a very subtle cues that, yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. And if you just kind of let it drift by, then all of a sudden, you've missed out on something important.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or it doesn't make another bit as suspenseful or interesting or whatever. And yeah, yeah. And that whole illusion of Hollywood, because, when you do sort of sit on the, I know actually one other movie I sat on, I remember it now, it was Scooby-Doo. So they were constantly filming, and Scooby-Doo was animated, but everyone else was physical, real. And so,
Real.
they were doing things. Oh, and then there was some monster that was animated as well. Because I remember them, and I was saying to someone who'd been there for like a while, I said, "What are they doing over here with this scene?" And they said, "Oh, well, they'll animate in this big monster." And, and then it kind of made sense because it was like they're filming without the key character there doing all the other stuff. And you see the illusion behind it. And
Right, right. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So improv comedy, that's now a mutual friend of ours who connected us. He was telling me about it. And when we talked a week or so ago, you were starting to tell me a little bit about it. How, like what I've heard of it, I mean, one thing I don't do art-wise is dance. I'm just too afraid to get up there. Like I can dance when no one's looking, when I really know no one's around, but I've got that fear of looking silly. So improv comedy to me would just be next level of that fear. Like, so tell us about what you do and how you get into that.
Well, it's interesting because, I've been doing all this work behind the camera, in production work. I don't know, 15 years ago, I was like, I should get a little bit of experience working in front of the camera. So originally my thought was, oh, I'm going to take an acting class or something like that. And also, I'm also not like at that time, especially, I wasn't like, hey, look at me. I was more behind the camera. So, and I just happened to be like walking down this alley, and there was a bulletin board for an improv theater that was like classes start within a week or whatever. And I was like, improv. Now I'd seen some improv comedy shows and stuff like that. I knew like Whose Line Is It Anyway, from television. So I had like some familiarity with it. I've seen Groundling shows and things like that. And I was like, maybe I should try that. So I signed up, and man, I'll tell you, I fell in love with it because it's this, first of all, you're building something. You're building a scene out of nothing, like maybe just a suggestion. And it's like you're working with other people that like you put out an idea or a thought, or just by saying your made up line out of the blue. And then I mean, it has this whole yes and kind of thing of like, I agree with what you're saying. And, here's another brick. And piece by piece, you're like sort of building this structure up in real time. And it's when it works, it's just like magic. People come up to you and it's like, come on, that was scripted. And you're like, no, it's not scripted or pre-planned or anything. It just sort of happens. And I would recommend it for anybody that kind of push out of their comfort zone and maybe it's great because it's collaborative. It's great because it's, constantly challenging you to be creative and stuff like that. And man, I'll say like first or second class, I was like, I love this so much. I have to keep doing this. So I kind of, went through all, they had a 6 class thing. And then I got onto a team there. Plus I formed an indie team. And then our indie team, we were doing, our own shows and bringing in other teams and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of improv opportunities in Los Angeles, of course. I don't know, Brisbane, maybe there's not as much there, but there's a lot here.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a good way for, people who want to be an actor, like to practice, like just to keep their skills up or whatever. So does it work better with when you know the other actors well, or does it, if you go in cold with that 5 actors you'd never seen before, does that work just as well?
I mean, a lot of improv is, you form an improv team or a troupe, and I think that is because as you get familiar with the performers. Now you don't know what character they're going to give you, but you know enough of their style of play. You have a little bit of insight. You know enough about them that it sort of helps you. I don't know. You don't second guess it, but you have a feel for how they are, their way of being. So that helps. But there's another thing called like a jam, and that is just literally just you're playing with people you don't even know, usually at like a place with a bar. So some are you're dealing with people that maybe had a couple too many or whatever, but you're getting up with total strangers. And I actually find that exhilarating too, because it's a whole different thing. I mean the sometimes the quality isn't quite as good because it is a little ragged, but there's also like a whole nother set of challenges, and it's sort of interesting to try that out too, where
Yeah.
you're usually it's at least here it's 3 people, and 2 other people you don't really necessarily know, and you're just doing you just know those basic ground rules of like, yes and you talk, and we take turns, and we support each other, like if somebody says something that becomes the base reality, you can't be like no, but it's all like, yeah, that thing you just said is true, and here's something else that's part of it. Yeah.
And you don't even know what your character is. Like the other people are sort of putting you into a role to a degree.
True. You very true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you might be assigned something that's like, okay, this is my new reality. I'm playing this character.
And I guess it's so hard because, like I was saying with dancing before, like good dancers practice a lot. Good actors practice a lot to be in, if you gave an actor a script and said, like, you've got to do like a world-class job of this, they would spend hours, days, weeks, months, I don't know, with the script, like getting into the other role, like this new person they become. Whereas you guys, like, it's just, you've had half a second to, and then you're trying to, from the words they've spoken to you, to even establish, am I male or female? What age am I likely to be? Am I intelligent? Am I undereducated? What experience do I have? And it's all in the split second. So
Yeah,
I guess it's quite pertinent to talking about intuition. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's what I
you're
was saying.
absolutely
Does
right.
it, sorry.
I was going to say you're absolutely right. I mean, it's sort of built around, you have to, again, it's based on Intuit. You're like sort of like have to pick up on the cues and the signs that your scene partner is giving you, and I had a coach one time. He said like doing improv is like driving down the road but looking in the rearview mirror, because you have to remember everything that's come before you that's made you where you are right now, so you're like paying attention to all these, like you said, cues and details and stuff like that as you go forward. I mean, you know that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because and I guess, if you were learning martial arts and then you started to spar against a partner who you'd never even seen before, like your um you don't know how they're going to move at you and all that sort of thing. So you've got all your previous training, but you don't know how it relates to this person. And so you've got some new person. And I know I listened to a book, and it was about apparently at the high levels of Tai Chi. Like, because to me, Tai Chi's always just been an exercise regime, but apparently at the high levels of it, particularly in Asian countries, it's very much a martial art. And
Oh,
these people get so um, into the moment with the whole thing that they literally, with like a hand movement, can push people like to the deck just with a simple hand movement, like just like it's sort of like you'd say it was Hollywood. This is not real. It's just, it's some little visual thing, that trick they've done. And I've forgotten now what track I was got onto that for, talking about the improv, but it was just, I think it was making decisions in less than a split second, because you've got so much going on happening, and you've got an audience watching, whether it's at a bar and half of them are drunk or whatever. You don't want them throwing their empty can at you. You got to pull something off and then hope that what you pulled off makes sense for the next person. Yeah, yeah. I guess
uh,
that would really test your intuition and your knowing which way to head with things. And
yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like a fantastic way to sort of expand creativity and play. And even if you're not, if you're more comfortable behind the camera, say you're not a performer, um, a lot of times you don't, like, for me, I don't even see the audience anymore. It's like there's like just sort of curtain there, and I'm just living within that reality of those characters and just playing that part for that moment of time, versus the you know day by. And then you're in a world where for a moment you can be whatever. You can be an astronaut or a garden gnome or whatever, and it's sort of fun to play in those different worlds.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've actually heard like our life here, like just take that to a different level. I've heard our life described like that. Like we are actors on a stage, that where the audience is, it's black as black and there's a spotlight on us. And all we can see is the spotlight on us and what we're doing at the moment. And our hearing is muffled. We can't hear when we start to forget our lines, we can't hear the audience helping, yelling out to help us through, which is sort of like, let's say we equate the audience to our ancestors. They're there trying to help us with the line we've forgotten, with the part of our life that we're stuck with, because we've got this spotlight on us, and our whole reality is who we are, where we are at that moment, where the light is shining. That's all we can see or focus on, and we can't even hear the audience helping us with our line that we've forgotten. Like, Doug, this is happening. Just watch out. There's like something coming out of the darkness, like swing to the left and it'll miss you, those sort of cues. And that's potentially maybe how our lives are, but we're so focused. But, so if we switched on the house lights and all of a sudden we could see all of these people in the audience who were like, they all became familiar. It was like, oh, wow, I've got this host helping me through my life and that's why I talked, when we talked the other day, for me, intuitions is us. We've got these invisible, benevolent beings who love us and constantly trying to get messages to us whichever way we can. And, they'll even like pull off one of the actors to the side, whisper in their ear and say, go up there into the light where Doug is and tell him this because he can't hear us. Like, and he needs to know this, if this is where his next meal's coming from, like, and yeah, yeah. And
Have
I
you
mean,
have you
that's, sorry.
have you had that experience before where it hasn't been directed at you, but it was something from somebody else, and then later on you found out, well, they were inspired by something outside of themselves to help move. That seems fascinating. That so many of us think like, oh, our intuition comes direct, but like I was just seems fascinating to be sort of like a third party intuition, you know? I don't know, that would be
Oh,
fascinating.
absolutely. I mean, it's going to, because if my theory is correct, and I only expect myself to believe my theory, I don't expect anyone else to believe it, that these invisible, to our human eyes, benevolent beings love us and are constantly trying to communicate with us. They'll communicate whatever way they can. And
Hmm.
and I'm not suggesting that they're more intelligent than us, but they're out there like constantly like brainstorming. How do we get this message to Doug? How do we get this message to Jerry? And sometimes it can take days or weeks or months to get the message through to us to the point where we would act on it. But there's other times, and it's not that we're that slow, but you're talking about the improv. In there, the messages are coming through because you would potentially get to a state that they call flow, where you're in the moment and it's just happening and you're not distracted and you've pulled down the walls that stop the create well that not stop the creativity coming, but stop you allowing it to flow. Like that you get to a point where you're dancing when you're thinking no one's watching and you're just doing it. Yeah, yeah. So
That's,
and
yeah.
maybe it happens like that, maybe it doesn't.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do. I mean, I think everybody has those moments of inspiration or whatever that, in hindsight, you're like, where did that idea come from? Or where did that, where did I get that notion? It's something remarkable that you just, and it seems serendipitous, but you know it sort of agrees with the belief that there's other uh forces or beings or ancestors or something out there in the fabric of time and space that kind of goes, hey, here's something that you should do, consider doing this or go this way or whatever,
yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
probably 7 or 8 years ago, a couple of my sons kept sort of suggesting to me, Dad, you need to start a podcast. Well, it took until 4 years ago before I did. And before we hit record, we were talking about the shirt you have on now, which was one of your originals for your Nerd Chic boutique. And you were talking about your daughter, like if you want to tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, I literally made this for me. I'm a fan of Lucha Libre, and so I was like, oh, what if there was like a shirt with a bunch of, masks of Mexican masked wrestlers that were, and I made it for myself. I just sort of designed the fabric, made it, and then I was wearing it. We were, the family was out somewhere, and my daughter remarked on it, and I was like, yeah, it was something I designed and made myself. And she's like, you should start up a store and do that. And then I was like, well, why not? So I did. I followed that. She didn't have to harp on me too long. I had some free time on my hands and I was like, yeah, let's just do this. And then I started, designing. It's basically, for the most part, the store started out as stuff that I would like to wear. So the entire store. But, I sort of realized my niche is sort of like in, sort of quirky, weird, nerdy science fiction comics and stuff like that, So that's sort of where that world is. But that inspiration all just came from like a casual conversation where it's like, you should consider this, and it sent it over on this whole trajectory,
Yeah,
It's,
yeah,
you know, just over 2 years now. And I I told myself I was gonna first I told myself I'll give it a year. And then as the year wound down, I was like, okay, 2 years and that's it. And then right at the 2 year mark, things started to pick up again. It started to, sort of, because I haven't really put too much money. I haven't really spent money on advertising and stuff like that. It's just sort of been word of mouth and then a little bit of social media and a little bit of, just kind of that kind of stuff. But then it picked up again. And, so now I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep it going. So, when I have downtime, I design something still pretty much something I would want to wear and
yeah.
then put it out there.
Fair enough.
making things that sort of I appreciate and enjoy. Things that again, I'm fascinated with like, movies and science fiction and comics and, interested in sort of these uh nerdy, quirky, even conspiracy theories. I'm sort of like, okay, where do they come from? What's the story behind the story? So I find all of that fascinating. So sort of that inspires my what I make, it's like, okay, this is sort of weird and offbeat and I like it. So I'm gonna pursue this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, when you go to Walmart or wherever, or Kmart or somewhere, you get some very basic stuff, like so it's someone wants to wear something that they know no one else is wearing.
exactly right. That's so
Yeah,
true. It's
yeah,
I don't need I don't personally want to wear, just a Spider-Man head on my shirt or, Marvel or some kind of very commercial thing. But like I have like a shirt I just did has like 15 designs of bad guy organizations. So like Hydra or the High Table from John Wick or all of these sort of bad guy. And it's I sort of imagined it as like an underworld convention. So like if they did a convention for all of the bad guys, what would that be like? So the sponsorship at the back of the shirt is just, sort of mostly, my interpretation of like the logo for like the Corleone family, which is, from Godfather, what would their logo be like and stuff
yeah,
like that. So just for
yeah.
fun.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. And like, you perceive it as the bad guy, but then I've never seen it. But my wife went and visited a friend in Chicago years ago, and they went and saw the movie. Oh, sorry, the play Wicked. Whereas it
Okay.
was have you ever seen it?
I haven't, but I know the story, that it pivots the story from, you know, the bad
Yeah.
guy's point of view, kind of, right?
Yeah, and you start to feel some empathy for the bad guy. And then there's another animated cartoon. Oh, I can't remember the name of it now, but it's about Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf. And you get to see from the Big Bad Wolf's angle, like Little Red Riding Hood was not such an innocent little girl, and it was Hoodwinked, it's called. That's right, Hoodwinked,
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
animated
I haven't
cartoon.
seen it, but I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a bit like Wicked, like where the story comes from the other way. So it's like these bad guys who we've always been told, like, there's a story on why they act how they do, and they're not so bad, and the good guys, maybe they're not so good all the time. Yeah,
Right. And I think in any narrative fiction, that's much more interesting, rather than the clean cut, like this is the good guy and this is the bad guy. It's like, that moral ambiguity is interesting, like, well, what made this person, quote, bad? And, what are the flaws of this good person? So it's interesting.
exactly. Yeah. And now, a couple of weeks ago, or a week or two ago, when we spoke and met, you were telling me about an interesting event that occurred on one of your birthdays, where intuition came to play. Would you like to share that one with us?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, because I was kind of struggling to remember, or think of specific instances of intuition. And this is one that's kind of hung with me for 20 years. It's just been, on my mind thinking about. But, on my 40th birthday, at the time I mean, we had rebuilt a loft in the top of this, 6-story French Normandy castle-like building, but it was kind of in a sketchy neighborhood. But we had that was sort of the location of our first animation studio. And we did my 40th birthday party up there. And my girlfriend at the time had, she was there with two of her friends, and they were leaving. And I was like, well, I'm still, here, but I'll walk you guys to your car. So we go down to the car and they're a block away and we turn one corner, we turn the next corner. As we turn the corner, I see, a group of guys, but I didn't really think anything of it and walk them over to the car. And at the time they said, do you want to ride back? And I had been kind of drinking and I was like, No, the fresh air is good. I'm just going to walk back. It's fine. So they got in the car and they drove off, and I started walking back. And as I came around the corner, like I literally rounded the corner and took a step, and those same three guys I'd seen earlier are there. And say the building's here, the street's over here, the sidewalk comes, around the building. There's two guys on the grass over here, and one guy kind of against the building here. And I step in the middle of them, and immediately I was like, uh-oh. And the guy that was by the building over here pulls out a gun and, sticks it into my stomach. And he's like, shut up, shut up, shut up. Just give us your money, and all that. And for whatever reason, I was, like when you're faced with that, you're suddenly your whole world collapses down and you're just staring at it. It's like there's a bomb, it's like there's this ticking bomb kind of here, and you're very focused on that. And I'm like, okay, they just, they want my wallet. But then part of my brain was screaming at me to just like delay. And I'm like, so, one guy, the other guy reached around and he was reaching into my pocket for my car keys, and I brushed his hand away. I was like, I got it, and then, I used to carry my wallet just in my back pocket back then. But even then, as I'm trying to delay, I'm like fumbling with it, taking my time, trying to like stretch out time for some reason. I mean, against all good judgment. And I'm facing this building, the guy with the gun over here, and suddenly he puts it away, and him and the two guys behind me, they all just walk away abruptly. And I'm just standing there, and I turn and I look over my shoulder back at the street, and there's a cop car that just rolled up on the street at that exact moment. And I would, and funny enough, they started to drive away. They just thought whatever happened broke up, and I yelled, and then those guys took off in multiple directions. So the cops pulled around, and they managed to catch one of them. But I have no idea. The smart thing to do, and in my mind, I'm even kind of like, how do I get out of this and all this? The smart thing to do would be just give him my wallet and be done with it. But there was something from somewhere that was saying, just give it more time. And to this day, I don't know what inspired or made me, who was telling me to do that. And I don't know whether it was, I think when we talked, I was like, I don't know whether it was an intuition, like, maybe somebody from outside was saying that, or maybe I looked, as I rounded the corner, I looked far enough down the street where I got a glimpse of something that, registered but didn't register. Who knows? Who knows? But I was like, in hindsight, I was like, God, that was dumb. Why not just give him the wallet and be done with it? But something made me delay that whole thing for just long enough to, you know, get him out of there. So it
And,
was,
and it worked well for you. Like the end result was good. And I've got a quick story. After you told me that last week, a day or so later, I was thinking about that, and I thought, oh, I've got a story of when I was 14 and didn't and listened to a stupid voice, and I paid the price. A town we were living in then, like we were like Saturday night, probably 10, 11 p.m. Mate and I were 14, we're walking down the street, and that particular town was not where the nightlife was. Like the streets were empty, barren, nobody in sight, no cars, nothing. Even though it was the main sort of town, but it wasn't the tourist area. And we're walking along, and three boys walking towards us, and this looks roughly similar age. And my mate sort of just says to me out of the side of his mouth, don't make eye contact, don't talk to them. If they say anything to us, ignore them, pretend they didn't speak, just keep walking, don't engage with them at all. And I'm like, oh, where'd that come from? Anyway, like whatever. So we just walk past, and I just sort of look down as we walk past them. And then next thing, there's a voice, hey, you two, from, obviously from one of the three boys who we just walked past. And my mate's going, just keep walking. Don't say anything. Don't turn around. Just ignore him. Just ignore him. And I'm like, why? He didn't yell out aggressively. It was just, hey, you guys. Like it was sort of, I guess, as friendly as you could get from a stranger.
Mhm.
And but he kept yelling out three or four times. And my mate's going, just don't even look, don't turn back. Just, and I'm like, why? Like, I don't know why I was listening to him. But anyway, suddenly we hear these footsteps running up behind us, and the three boys run around in front of us and physically stop us from walking. And I was the tallest out of the five of us. And the guy who's confronted me now, he's a bit shorter, but very stocky, very solid. And he's like, you ignoring me? Like, right, like he was very angry now that it was so obvious we were ignoring him. And made him feel stupid in front of his friends. And sort of, the mate and I was saying, oh, we didn't know you meant us. Yeah, which was just stupid, a lie. And next thing, this guy, this stocky guy, he must have done boxing or something. I didn't even see a right hook coming, just whacked me right in my left ear. Lucky right
Wow.
beside me, there was a trash bin, like can, and it sort of broke my fall as I hit the deck. And then he's sort of yelling at me, get up, get up. And my inner voice was telling me, if you get up, he's going to belt you back down. So I just laid there and just sort of wouldn't get up. And in the end, they wandered off. But I had this thumping left ear for like an hour or two after that, because he connected sort of pretty directly with it. And I'm thinking, like, if I hadn't been so stupid, because the guy, when he confronted us, he goes, all I wanted to know was what the time was, because we haven't got a watch. And I saw one of you guys with a watch on. And maybe he was telling the truth, maybe he wasn't. Um, but I got belted in the head because I listened to my idiot mate instead of my normal instinct would have been to stop and turn and say, yeah, what did you want? And maybe he would have said, what time is it? Because this is back a long time ago. This is 45 years ago. And,
Right.
it's not like anyone has a smartphone on or there were clocks around the place. If you did want to know the time and you saw someone with a watch, you would ask them. And so it didn't go as well for me listening to my stupid mate instead of just my normal response, not even my normal response would be to be polite and turn
Right.
and answer, yes, what did you want?
But your intuition had your back the second time because at least
Yes.
at least there was something inside of you saying, I'm not going to get up and I'm not going to spring up and get ready to fight this guy. He knows how to box. I'm going to
Oh,
stay
yeah.
right
And
here.
I'm a super passive guy. The only other time I ever got in a fight with anyone I didn't know physically, when I was 8, we went on holidays and there was a park across the road from where we were staying. And there was like a building there, a single story building, and there was another little boy who was he might have been 6, and the two of us sort of befriended each other. And next thing, we've climbed up on the roof of this little building. We're sitting on the roof, and then shortly after, 8 boys about my age came along, and it was their turf, and they were like, "Get down!" So we got down. They left the little kid off to the side, and I was taller again. So there's 8 of them surrounded me, and they're like, "You have to fight this guy, like, to get out of here or something." And I'm like, I was freaked out, totally freaked. I'm just not a fighter at all. And I've got 8 guys, and they're all laughing and just joking. And I don't know whether it was intuition or what happened. It came out of nowhere because I did not pre-think of this like for a millisecond that I was aware of. But all of a sudden, this guy who's I'm faced with, and the others are surrounded me, he's sort of like looking at his mates laughing. And I just out of nowhere just came up with a fist and just woofed him straight in the stomach. And he went straight to the ground. And where he made that gap where he went down, I got out of the circle and sprinted. And I managed to start running while they were all stunned, like what just happened. And then I sort of got away and got over to the apartments where we were staying, screaming out for dad before they rugby tackled me. But because I
Yeah,
kept
because you're
screaming
8.
out for dad, they left. But yeah, yeah, for me, I'm not a fighter. I can tell you. I just when I was
Yeah.
down, my instincts was stay down. This guy's gonna he'll just get you up and pop you to the ground again very
Yeah.
quickly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I think like you were saying, a lot of that stuff, whether it's direct connections or maybe through our long-term DNA connection, who knows? I mean, that's the thing. It's a mystery to me how, but like some of that stuff seems to message you, especially in those dramatic moments, where there's traumatic moments of thing. I don't know if you've ever you know, like been in, traumatic situation, a car wreck or something like that, where time seems to slow down and you know, you have all these thoughts and things kind of going through your head while the event is happening, it's like, and then when you think about it, later, you're like, wow, so much went on in that split second thing, mentally. So I don't know. It's
Yes.
fascinating, but I don't know
Yeah.
where it comes from either.
Yeah, exactly. It
So,
comes out of nowhere. Yeah, I remember once when I was 11 or 12 riding my bicycle down this big long hill. And I used to ride that way to school every day. And it was a very quiet sort of street. And this day I'm pedaling hard in top gear and I'm getting up maximum speed. And then I get the handlebars and I start. This is in the 70s. Did you ever have? We used to call them here dragsters. They had a 20-inch wheel, 3-speed stick shift with the sort of sissy handlebars that came up
uh,
high. And I
right.
have seen them
Yeah.
on California TVs from the
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
we
Like
had
a
them.
banana seat or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Looks
the long
looks
seat.
like a
Yeah.
chopper seat. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so, and I'm pedaling, I'm going as hard as I can. And then it was sort of boring because every day I'd do that. And then I'm thinking, I'm going to sort of swing from side to side. And I've sort of started to, then I'm moving the wheel. And next thing I got the death spin, and it's just, and then it's all over like massive spill. Like, felt like I did 50 tumbles and skin off
Yeah.
everywhere. But that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
a very
Yeah.
slow motion moment, like as each little bit of skin came off this knee, this elbow, that elbow, the head, the ear, the everywhere, because there was no helmets in those days, of course. And I guess I was
Yeah.
lucky that I had shoes on.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, very slow motion, yeah, moment, that sort of thing. Yeah. Anyway. So I've got one last question for you that's kind of not directly related to intuition, but very much related to our lives. And it's a personal sort of question, but I ask it because I have a lot of fears of a lot of different things. A lot of things I'm extremely courageous with, and but I still have fears. So I'm just curious, Jerry, what is your greatest fear?
Ooh, that's a good question. Uh, what am I moving? You know, and I try not to dwell on it, and it's not me personally. I think we talked initially. I mean, I have a pretty big family. I have a wife and I have three daughters, and I just became a grandfather. So I have, and I guess if I worry about them, something happening to them more so at this point in my life, you kind of get to a certain point, you're sort of like, hmm, I'm good. I'm, I'm okay. But the things that, but I also, believe in letting, the kid climb the tree and fall out of the tree. And so you sort of let them spread their wings and, live their lives. But probably my biggest fear is something happens to they're all girls, one of my daughters, whatever it could be, anything that would, harm them. I guess that would, when I think about it, that's probably if I put bandwidth into anything I'm worried about, that's what I worry about, I guess. But I
Yeah.
try not to, I really try not to dwell on things that are, would, could, might happen. Um, yeah,
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. I've got 4 sons. I know what it's like. And
yeah,
yeah, yeah. And the grandchildren are nice. I've got 2 grandchildren and yeah, they're
yeah.
fun. Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure, and it's like that, like, that's the thing that concern, like, because other stuff, uh, like spiders or the outdoor or anything like that, that doesn't, whatever, wolves, we had a couple of coyotes wandering around our neighborhood. I'm not really concerned or afraid of them, but but on the other hand, like, and but then you also have to put like to be afraid of things for your children, you sort of have to put I guess mind, you have to put some mind share into worry, thinking of scenarios to be worried about. And I try and, push that aside too. So I don't have that. But I would say if anything, that would be it. Does that make sense? I don't
Yeah,
know if
it
that's,
does. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's cool. All right.
yeah.
So I'm going to have your links and stuff in the show notes, and so people can go on and find the links to buy your very cool shirts.
Oh, that'd
And
be
some of them
fantastic.
are t-shirts or Hawaiian shirts, and you've got tote bags, a few different sort of shoes and bright
Yeah,
green shoes and things like that in there. I'm saying, yeah, there's some quirky, cool, very
for sure.
individual sort of stuff in there, and it's nothing's overpriced. Everything's great, and you've got free shipping to like half a dozen different countries.
Yeah, we're working on expanding that and we're working on opening it up to, more countries. We've had a couple of requests for more countries in both Europe and Australia and all that. So
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of have a thing on there under shipping, like if you're interested, reach out. And it might be a few bucks more or whatever, but I can probably ship to anywhere in the world. We started off branding it as free shipping and I kind of hanging with that for right now, but I just can't afford to free ship to certain
Cool.
regions because
Oh, I get it.
yeah, I mean, but
Yeah.
although now with the tariffs here in the United States, it's sort of like it's become a little bit more, it's actually, I've been selling more to Europe and some of the other countries than the US in some cases because
Oh, wow. Okay.
tariffs have kind of made things more expensive here. But I've managed to hold the line on pricing for a while, so I'm happy about that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I haven't followed that whole thing of how it's actually affecting, what it's affecting from where and what country. It's just like, oh
Yeah.
boy, it's a
Yeah.
mess. Yeah. Because some of those things, the theory doesn't actually play out. Sometimes yeah, someone profiteers on it in a way and you think, I thought that wasn't supposed to go up over there, but it did.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, unintended consequences, I guess. It's like
Yes.
people say, oh, we're going to do this and it's going to change this way, and it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to mention before we go?
No, I mean, I can't think of it. I feel like, we sort of rounded out the story of me. I mean, I don't know if I gave you enough in terms of intuition. We had a couple of stories there.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great.
Okay,
No,
great. Yeah.
yeah, it's funny. Yeah, no, it's all about men developing their intuition and reasons why. And you've given us a couple of good reasons on, how things happen and what we do when we follow things. Like when you left Michigan and moved to loaded up the vehicle and headed to Beverly
Hollywood.
Hills,
Yeah. Yeah.
California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to say, I listened to, since we first connected, I listened to a couple of your podcasts and stuff like that. And I think they're great. And I always like, this, when we started did our pre-meeting and this meeting, I always enjoy talking to you. You're a great conversationalist and it's, things seem to, from my perspective, things seem to flow great. And, I really enjoyed, meeting you and hanging out and spending time with you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I do the podcast because I enjoy talking to men who are intuitive, who follow hunches and do things, and whether they realize it or not. Yeah, I've had a few guests on who haven't even thought they were intuitive at all, or their perception of it was different than what mine was. And yeah, after the conversation, they've gone, yeah, I'm into that. That's good. Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
I like to flow and follow my life to be. So yeah. So thank you for your time. And as you said, I've reciprocal from me. I've very much enjoyed talking with you and was looking forward to it from our conversation last week. And yeah, I think you're the first person I've spoken to who's worked in Hollywood for 30 plus years, yeah, in that scene.
Well, yeah, we'll have to keep in touch after this, but again, thank you very much, Doug. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.